Welcome to Grace Fellowship Baptist Church Wednesday evening Bible study for Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. Today is Saturday, July 17th, 2021, and we are in the final chapter of Joshua this week, and chapter 24. We'll start in verse 1. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. This is right after his address. He apparently he gave the address to these people, but he assembled the leaders. He called them together. In the clannish society, the tribal society that Israel was at the time, if you got the leaders to agree to it, theoretically everybody followed. In practice, that wasn't always quite true, never, but everybody maintained the fiction that the whole clan stayed together and the whole tribe stayed together, and they followed their leaders, and their leaders, there was always inter-group discussion. There was never complete unity. But on the other hand, the leaders didn't get to be leaders and be at the top of the heap if they failed to keep a majority following them. And so, is the way things tended to go. So he's getting the leaders, knowing that if they obey God, then the country will obey God. If they disobey God, then the country will disobey God, because they will follow their leaders, and they will pick leaders that they will follow. And if you can convince the leaders, they will do what it takes to get everybody else to follow. And so he's assembling them. He's given the final address, and then he's assembling these leaders. And the reason it's at Shechem, that's where the tabernacle is. And or the shop, and so it's the place for religious activity. Verse 2, Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago your forefathers, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the river and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the river and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. Then I brought out your fathers out of Egypt. You came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the desert for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them from before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam, so he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, Jebusites, but I gave them into your hands, and I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you, also the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow, so I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities you did not build. You live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness." Let me stop at end of 13, because Joshua is reviewing the history of Israel. And Moses has reviewed the history of Israel. In one sense, Moses condenses, I mean, Joshua condenses uh, Judges and Exodus down to, what is it, 10 verses. We've talked about Moses with a politician, and he wrote extensively. He talked extensively. When he gave a farewell address, we got Deuteronomy, and when Joshua was a general, and when he gives a farewell address, it can be said in 3 minutes. Um, again, he's the general. He's shortened the point, and he sums up their history. And less time it took him to give a farewell address. He gets the high points, and that God's been with them the whole time because they obeyed God. And he reminds them of the things they witnessed. The old folks, that is, the ones his age. He saw them himself. There's a lot of those people around. They're in the land, and they can testify. And so he's mentioning those things. So he gives a summary from, before Abraham to the present day. Sums it up. In verse 14. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So he then gives the charge to the people. He has assembled them. He's given them his farewell address. He's made the argument that obeying God is what gets you blessed, and failing to obey God and going your own way is what gets you cursed. And then he quickly reminds them of the history of the people and the amazing things God has done. And then he gives them a choice. Are you going to worship God, Yahweh? Are you going to worship some of these strange gods, either the ones that were worshipped on the other side of the Euphrates River, in Egypt, here in this land? None of those gods are powerful. God has defeated them all. He called Abraham out of the land of Ur, and those gods were powerless to do anything about it. And then God made a fool of the Egyptian gods, and God defeated on the battlefield all the Canaanite gods, which at least some of them were war gods, and it was whichever people won, their God won. Well, God came in and just wiped those people out. Who won? This is not lost on these people. They've spent the last 20 years in Canaan or so, seeing the results of God winning, and finding the evidence that these war gods, who won the battle determined which god was stronger, and they've sit there and wiped the land out of these Canaanites and live in it now. Should you worship that God that got defeated by Yahweh? And so he's presenting the charge before the people. It's time for them to make a decision. Are they going to worship Yahweh or some other God? Verse 16. Then the people answered, Far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our fathers up out of Egypt from that land of slavery and performed these great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through whom we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God. So they answer back, they're going to worship Yahweh. There is no other God. They've seen the miracles. They've seen the thing. They've seen God fulfill his promises. And he's defeated all the other gods and defeated all the other people. And they're now living in that land. So, they are, professedly claiming they're going to worship Yahweh. Nothing else. Verse 19, Joshua said to the people, "You are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make the end of you after he's been good to you." So Joshua is warning them. Now these individuals are going to worship God. They knew personally. They'd seen it themselves. It wasn't just a story told to them later. They have no doubt that God is real and worth worship and one. Joshua, though, is pointing out that we are rebellious people. We go our own way. We think we know better. And it's easy to believe that the things you don't trust are, in modern parlance, fake news. That if it's inconvenient facts, it's not true anymore. That's as old as humanity. And that we're going to follow what we think is right, whether it's right or not. And we're compromisers, and God is a jealous God. If we compromise his way with other ways, it's wrong to him. And he's going to punish. And he may be a God of forbearance and give us time to repent. But the destruction will come if we don't repent. And he's warning them, just because God has been good to them doesn't mean he will always be good to them. If they don't obey, God will punish them and bring an end to the people. Verse 21, but the people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve the Lord." Then Joshua answered, "You are witnesses against yourself that you have chosen to serve the Lord." "Yes, we are witnesses," they replied. "Now then," said Joshua, "throw away the foreign gods that are among you, and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." And the people said to Joshua, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." On that day Joshua made a covenant with the people, and there at Shechem he drew up for them decrees and laws, and Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of the Lord. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. "See," he said to all the people, "this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to you. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God." So he has brought the people there. He's had this conversation with them where, he warned them. He asked them to serve the Lord. They said, "We're going to do it." He says, "You're not capable. God's a jealous God. He's going to destroy you if you don't." They said, "We're going to worship God." Back and forth, back and forth. And he made them witnesses to it. He's trying to convince the younger generation that it's going to hear the tales and think they're just tales. That it's not important, that they can do better. And then he, swears the oath for the community. Again, once a generation, renewing the covenant. And this apparently was part of God's plan that every generation or so, the community would renew their vows to God and renew the covenant so that every generation would make that vow. And, Moses had done it. He had it done at Sinai. He had done it at the end of his life at the fords to the Jordan River at Kadesh Barnea. And now Joshua, at the end of his life, is having him renew it again. And, the people that actually renewed it, they were obedient. Now, at Mount Sinai, a lot of those guys, just a few weeks later, are going to go, no, we can't enter the land. God's not big enough to give it to us. And they got to wander around until for 40 years still they were dead. But the ones that renewed it, Kadesh Barnea, they obeyed and they conquered the land. And now that they're old folks and dying off, Joshua renews it again. And those folks that renewed it again, as long as they lived, they obeyed God. And they led the community. The point I was making earlier about Joshua bringing the elders and the leaders together, he did not really bring every Israelite and empty, depopulate the land. He didn't bring every man, which was supposed to happen at certain times and festivals. He just brought the leadership in. He knew that if the leadership obeyed, the people would follow. If the leadership did not obey, the people would wander. And he knew that if he tried to bring everybody in, it would leave the land vulnerable. And there were still people there that wanted their land back, that had fled, and they were now living as refugees in other countries and other places. And they wanted their land back. If they saw the Israelites leave, they would run in and go, it's our house again. It's our land again. So you got to leave somebody home. But the leadership, when they promise something, the whole community will do it, because that's the way their society was organized. And they lived in fairly tight communities that knew each other very well. And so the leaders wouldn't make a decision that the rest of the family wouldn't obey. That they all obeyed and that they all renewed the covenant. In effect, meant the whole community renewed the covenant. And when it says all the people, he's talking about all the assembled people, and therefore everybody that led. So even people that weren't present physically made this oath. Excuse me. I know I'm going to turn my phone off. I apologize. And then, like a lot of other things, they made a memorial to this event. He set up a stone, and it was a witness. And this stone was to be a witness for all time that they had renewed the covenant. They were to obey God. Excuse me. And they were, it was like every time they stopped, They set up a pile, a pillar, a stone of some sort to be a witness about the events they just had. They crossed the Jordan. They brought 12 stones out, etc. And so, um, you know, this is a witness that they have promised. They have made an oath before God that they're going to obey God. And it's his lasting memorial that he caused them again to obey God, to swear to obey God. And verse 28. Then Joshua sent the people away, each to his own inheritance. So after the events, after the renewing of the covenant, he sends everybody home. His work is done. They're going to get to enjoy their inheritance, enjoy their land. God's given them. It's now time to go live the life that God had promised them. That they were in the land of milk and honey. It was time to go, milk the cows and raise the bees and plant the gardens and enjoy the goodness that God had there for them. Verse 29. After these things, Joshua son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. So, Joshua goes home and he dies at a very old age, 110. He was a young man, but an adult when they left Egypt. And that's why he could become Moses' servant. He spent 40 years wandering around the desert. So, call him 15 when he leaves Egypt, just for kind of a youngest age. That makes him 55 when he starts conquering the land. So, he's now 110 when he dies. He's been in the land for as long as he served Moses. Served in Egypt and then served under Moses. So he's an old man, particularly for that day, well advanced in years. And he got to enjoy his land, and he got to live there, and he got to be buried there. And the thing is, everybody that knew him, everybody that served with him, the people that were, quote, too young when their parents rebelled and were going to be killed and captured by the Canaanites, that went in under Joshua and conquered the land. 40 years younger than Joshua, in one sense. They saw the miracles. They knew. And as long as they were alive, Israel obeyed, and they worshipped Yahweh, and they served him. And it wasn't just Joshua. It was the whole community. But as that generation died, we're going to learn next week, they began to suffer, and the community began to slip away. But during Joshua's lifetime, and during the lifetime of the elders that survived him, the witnesses to all these events, the people obeyed. Verse 32. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem in the tract of land which Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas, in the hill country of Ephraim. Uh, remember, we had said that Eleazar had already died, so this is, the tag end of the book of Joshua. It just points out he had died and had been buried. We'd already seen Phinehas as the high priest and the leader. Eleazar was fairly old when they entered the land, so you wouldn't expect him to live another 55 years in this case. And it was apparently during the campaigns, and they conquered the land, and then he got to be buried in peace in his son's inheritance. And Phinehas then was the high priest, and we've already seen what he did. And so, he then is, living in his own land. Phinehas is. He's serving as high priest at Shiloh. Shechem is, of course, the community that Abraham buried Sarah, and there's lots of events that have gone on. It's going to be an important place in Israel for a long time. It's going to be, at least some of the time, at the northern kingdom's capital once they split off. A lot of history happens there. But they fulfilled the vows they made in Egypt. They took Joseph's bones with them, and they buried him there at Shechem. And it was the place where Joshua lived and died. And so the memorials were there. It was another place of memorial. And so the book ends by tying up all the loose ends that started in the book of Exodus, really. Well, actually, I guess Genesis. Joseph dies and makes people promise, "You're going to leave here, take my bones with you." He knows he's a big, important political figure. The Egyptians are going to embalm his body. He also knows that their religious rituals mean nothing, and that he doesn't want to be left in Egypt as an Egyptian. But when you leave, take me home. Take me home to where I was born, where I grew up, where I should be, and bury my bones there. And they left Egypt with them in Exodus. They hauled them around the desert for 40 years. They hauled them around Canaan for a while they conquered the land. And now we find that, yes, they did bury. The implication is they buried them fairly soon after conquering the land. They didn't wait till Joshua died and then finally get around to it. Joshua was probably the leader that caused them to be done, but these people weren't necessarily writing chronologically, and it didn't fit with the narrative of conquering the land that was on early in the book, so they didn't mention it when they did it in the campaign. And they do need to record it somewhere that, yes, we did exactly what we promised, that our forefathers promised, that we would take Joseph's bones with us, and we did, and we buried them in the land. So they're coming to that end and tying it up the loose end, that, yes, we fulfilled our promise. That's part of obeying God, is that they fulfill their promise. Also, the death of Eleazar. We know, because we've come across before, that Phinehas was the high priest, that he's already died. Otherwise, his son wouldn't be serving as high priest. Um, and so they're tying up the loose end of what happened to him. Um, you know, he wasn't. It wasn't part of the narrative of conquering the land, and so they didn't mention it in time in the chronological plates. But they do need to mention, hey, he died and we buried him. We buried him on the land that was his inheritance, his that was conquered for him, and his allotment. And so, they're tying the loose ends up. And in tying the loose ends up, they show that they're still obeying God, still obeying their oaths, uh, being faithful to God. Joshua is a remarkable man. God apparently did speak to him, not face to face like Moses, but still spoke to him, still commanded him, still talked to him. The high priest Aaron, the high priest Eleazar, the high priest Phinehas, it's evident that he talked to them also. But Joshua was not a priestly man. He was a general, and still God talked to him. He was the servant to Moses, and as such, that's where God started talking to him. He's being Moses' servant, being the guy that Moses leaned on, that he depended upon, was his errand messenger and fetch person. He would be simply present when God was speaking with Moses, and therefore could hear what Moses said. And that's part of where he started getting his devout faith, is he saw directly Moses speaking face to face with God. He therefore also knew the voice of God. And so when God spoke to him, he knew it was God. He didn't have to question. He didn't wonder, am I hallucinating? He knew who was talking to him. And so, he is faithful to God for, the first half of his life, going, yes, we can conquer this land. And then he suffers through the wandering in the desert just like everybody else, but he gets to live through it. And then he gets to live that much longer afterwards. It's like God said to him, typical lifespan in your time is 45 to 55. You're a really old man if you live to 55. You've lived that long just to conquer the land? Or even longer than that. They suspect it was about 5 years to conquer the land. So he's 60 when he conquers the land. You've lived longer than you should just to conquer the land. Here, I'm going to reward you. You're going to get to stay in the land as long as you should have if the people had gone in the first time. So God's promise to Joshua, not explicitly recorded, is that he would get to enjoy the land like he wanted to as a young man. Go in and live in it and conquer it as a young man, and then live. And God blessed him with the kind of life, the long enough life, that he could spend 55 years in the promised land. We serve a wonderful God. He has good things in mind for us. We do live in a fallen, broken, evil world where evil things happen. And evil things happen to good people. But any goodness we have is just from righteousness from God. It's not who we are. It's because God chose to forgive us and give us that righteousness. And Joshua knew that. Joshua knew his obedience to God that got, blessings from God. He may not have understood all the relationships. I've pointed out that a lot of God's law is just there to prevent the problems that common sin cause. That, if you obeyed them, you're obeying good sanitation laws. You're living a good, healthy life, etc., etc. And so you wouldn't have the diseases the Egyptians had or the Canaanites had. And if you follow their practices, you're going to follow their poor health practices and ended up sick. It's not that you are blessed because you obeyed, but your obedience caused the blessing. And a lot of the Mosaic law is like that. It's a law that's designed to govern a people. And it's got to include everything it takes to govern land, from a justice system to the basic laws that everybody's going to obey, to health and sanitation and communications, and on and on and on. And so God knows the perfect law and set it up. And as long as they worship Him and obey His laws, they're going to be blessed because they don't know about microbes and sanitation, health, and things like that. But they're going to do those things because He told them to do it. They don't have to understand, they just have to obey. Likewise, today, we don't have to understand always. And people who always question, well, why? And what's the reason? And they can always come up with a reason against whatever reason you come up with that you may know. Well, the thing is, you don't know all the answers. You're not that wise. I'm not that wise. I can give you probably more answers than your typical person of why obeying God's wise. But He knows what's best. And there comes a point when we just have to obey. We're not going to know all the reasons. We're not going to be able to answer all the questions. That's the nature of half-truths. It takes a whole lot longer to explain why a half-truth is false than why a truth is truth. And it's easy to get tripped up. And to engage in the world and convince them to follow Jesus, we do have to do that some. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. But be aware, you're never going to be able to argue enough to convince everybody in an absolute proof of the truth of God and the rightness of His ways. But you can look at history and say, hey, He did it to Abraham. He did it to Isaac. He did it to Jacob. He took them down to Egypt, just like He said He would to both Abraham and to Jacob. And they went down there and they stayed 430 years, just like He told Abraham. And they came out and they worshipped Sinai, just like He told Moses they would. And then, because they didn't obey, they got to wander around for 40 years until everybody died. And then they conquered the land, just like He'd told Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses that they would. And they got to live in it. And those who stayed faithful to Him, like Joshua, got to live in it like they would have if they had obeyed the first time and went straight in and conquered it. That same length of time. The fact that Israel still exists today, and that His people, the Jews, still exist today, despite thousands of years of persecution, is an example of his testimony, of the saving testimony that God has. He's preserved his people. Multiple times they've been wiped down to just a few thousand individuals. And then they've regrown. God is good to his people. And he does bless his people, whether his chosen people, the Jews, or his redeemed people, Christians. And he does bless them according to how much we obey. And if you look at American history, times of prosperity follow times of obedience. When Americans turn to God and trust him and obey him, it starts a period of prosperity. And anytime that we start to disobey, trouble starts coming. And, it very often is the same things that God talks about in the law of Moses, that it'll be disease, pestilence, and famine, and drought, and war, and, and you look at just the headlines today, and you see we've been rebelling against God for 2 or more generations, and more openly, and we're even getting worse, and trouble's increasing, and we have pandemic among us, we have disruptions in food, a land that can grow more food than we can eat, and we can feed a quarter of the world, and we can't even feed ourselves right now correctly. We can't even get the food that is produced to the people that need it. Farmers just have to throw it away because they can't, because the people that would buy it from them can't buy it. Things like that. Pouring milk down the sewer. Perfectly good milk, just because their buyer can't buy it at the moment. Can't ship it away. And then there's people literally going hungry because they didn't get that food that got wasted. Because, and we don't think it's God. He's removing his blessing from us because we're disobedient to him. It's as old as the beginning of, even before the flood. Adam and Eve. It's as old as Adam and Eve. Excuse me. It's getting past my bedtime. And it's as current as the current headlines. God's still the same. He's eternally the same. He's still the same as he was in the past, in the present, in the future. We can depend upon his future being exactly like he said it would, because he does know the future. Gracious Lord, we do thank you that you love us, that you care for us, that you have redeemed us. Lord, help us to be people who humble ourselves and pray and seek your face and turn from our evil way, that we would follow you, that we would depend upon you, that we would, when we learn of wickedness in ourselves, we would continually come back to you and seek forgiveness and seek repentance and turning and doing what you say, that you would bless us again. Lord, you are righteous to judge this land for our evil. We don't value human beings, whether they're unborn or whether they're workers or whether they're people that you gave a darker skin tone to so that they don't sunburn as easily, to old folks that have lived past their productive working life. Lord, we ask that we repent and follow you and honor you with how we treat each other, with how we treat ourselves, uh, with how we worship, with what we believe. Too many deny that you even exist, Lord. And we just ask that you would have us, your people, to once again do what you ask us to do, humble ourselves, and pray and seek your face, and repent from our evil way, and turn and follow you. In your holy name, amen. And I hope to see you Wednesday at church, and if not, we'll see you back next week here on this channel. We will start the book of Judges, but to do that, we're going to have to back up and look at what Moses had said in Exodus about the period that would be after Joshua. So we'll be looking a little bit of Exodus and then the beginning of Judges. Hope to see you next week or Wednesday.